Hey everyone, welcome to this full cold email infrastructure and deliverability course. In this video, we are going to do a complete breakdown of how all the technical components of cold email fit together and what you need to be doing at every single step of the way when it comes to the technical aspects of cold email to make sure that your emails are landing in the primary inbox. Now, if you're watching this video, I assume you're probably already sending cold emails, or you're trying to start sending cold emails and you're just overwhelmed by everything that's being said about cold email deliverability, especially over the past 6 to 12 months. You probably heard that there was some kind of a deliverability crisis, that it's very hard to achieve good cold email deliverability in 2026. So I'm just going to make this video basically cover everything that you need to know from a deliverability perspective so that you're able to sort of filter out all the noise that you're seeing online and that people are posting to push their own agendas and their own tools and their own software out there. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you need to do when it comes to cold email deliverability and how to basically land in the primary inbox. Now, what are we going to cover in this course? So first of all, this course is for you if you already know what cold email is and you would just want to understand and master the technical aspect of cold email. So you either sent cold emails before, maybe you've bought your domains, you've set up your email accounts, you've connected them to a sequencer, you've tried sending, and once again, you're just overwhelmed by everything that's going on. You're probably hearing words like warm up, DKIM, DMARC, DNS settings, spin tags, all these things that you need to be doing and configuring, but you just don't really know what they mean. Okay, so in this video, we're going to cover all of that stuff. Now, this is not a cold email script writing course. Okay, so if you want to know how to write cold email scripts, how to build offers and do all that stuff, then you can go to my channel and I have a full course covering copywriting and offer creation. This is not a list building course. So if you want to know how to build lead lists, then once again, I have dozens of videos on my channel that you can just go and watch. And the other thing is that this is not going to be a quick 3 to 5 tips video, which basically is not even going to help you. So if you're just looking for something quick and you don't actually want to understand what you're doing, then you should probably go and watch another video because this is going to be a pretty long video. But if you do want to understand what cold email deliverability is, what cold email infrastructure is, and how to achieve good deliverability, then you're in the right place. Now, just for some context, if you don't know who I am, my name is Alex. I'm the founder of SparkLead, a B2B lead generation agency that helps companies in the B2B space book qualified meetings through cold email and warm calling. Since starting the agency, we've sent over 5 million cold emails, probably closer to around 10 million at this point. We've booked over 1,000 sales calls, generated 1.5 million in added revenue for clients, and close to around 20 million in pipeline. Now, this is just a quick case study that we have here from a B2B SaaS client that we recently helped book over 100 meetings with cold email. And from those 100 meetings, they were able to close around 50 deals, generating hundreds of thousands in revenue. We have a ton of case studies on our website. We have more case studies on my YouTube channel if you want to go and check those out. But let's dive in. All right, so what are we covering? This is basically your full course roadmap. Okay, so this is basically the full course from start to finish. Every chapter is in the right order so that you can understand everything step by step. First, we're going to go over infrastructure and deliverability. I feel like people don't understand what infrastructure is, what deliverability is. These are just very common terms that people are throwing around, but nobody understands, or I guess most people don't understand what each of those things actually is. So we're going to go over what those are and why understanding what these are is the single biggest determinant of success in cold email, why this matters right now, so what the current state of deliverability is right now, and what is the cost of getting this wrong at the time of recording this video. Now is one of the most important times that you need to understand what deliverability is and how to get good at achieving good deliverability, because it's only going to get more complicated. So you need to understand this right now. Then we're going to plan your volume. Okay, so before you start talking about domains, inboxes, warm-up processes, your sequencers, you need to identify what volume you want to be sending on a monthly basis, because that's going to determine how many domains you're going to buy, how many inboxes you're going to buy. And then we're going to go into domains, inboxes, your warm-up process. We're going to talk about DNS settings, your domain and email account live spam, how warm-up works, all of that stuff, how you should be ramping up your sending volume. Then we're going to go into your sequencer, your lists, and your scripts. So how you should be using tools like SmartLead, Instantly, Email Bison, how you should be verifying your lead list and writing your copy in a way that is not going to damage your deliverability. Next, we have long-term management and troubleshooting. Okay, so how you should be troubleshooting your campaigns if they're not performing well, how you should be dealing with disconnects, when you should be refreshing your domains and inboxes, how you should be monitoring what you should be monitoring, what you need to do when something is basically not working. And finally, we're going to go over some mistakes, a final checklist, and some FAQs as well. So real examples, common errors, and also a complete deployment checklist, so that by the end of this video, not only will you know exactly what to do, but every time you're going to build a new infrastructure or launch campaigns, you're going to have a checklist that is ready for you so you can actually cross-check it with what you've done with your campaigns so you know if you're missing anything. All right. So So a quick note here, investment expectations in order to actually do this properly. A small but a successful cold email infrastructure is only going to cost you a couple hundred a month for the domains, the accounts, and the sequencer. And the cost of doing it badly is far higher than the cost of doing this right. Okay, so if you're buying cheap infrastructure because you don't want to pay a couple hundred a month for good infrastructure, then you're going to end up paying more in the long run because your infrastructure is going to burn within the first couple of weeks, and you're going to have to do the whole thing again. You're going to have to wait another 14 days for your email accounts to warm up again, and it's going to take longer in terms of time, and it's also going to cost more. So just do this once, do it right, and you're not going to have to build the infrastructure again and again every couple of weeks and even every couple of months. We have clients, we've been running the same infrastructure for almost a year, and we haven't even had to make any refreshes to their domains or their email accounts. Okay, so what is infrastructure and what is deliverability? Okay, so these are phrases you've probably heard before. You don't have good infrastructure, your deliverability is damaged. You don't have good deliverability, you're not landing in the primary inbox because your infrastructure is broken. All of these things, they don't mean anything if you don't understand what we're referring to when we're talking about infrastructure and deliverability. If you walk into any cold email community, or if you're just reading posts on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or any other kind of social media platform, you're gonna hear the words infrastructure and deliverability 100 times. They're gonna be used in every other sentence. And most people can't actually tell you what either of those words actually mean. If you ask them to pinpoint what is infrastructure, what is deliverability, then they probably can't even tell you. And it's something that you need to understand, because most people just think infrastructure is email accounts and domains. And I'm going to show you why infrastructure is more than your domains and your email accounts, and why there's more components that come into your infrastructure. Okay, so when you can't define what infrastructure is or what deliverability is, then you can't fix them. Okay, you can't fix what you can't define. What is infrastructure? Cold email infrastructure is everything that allows you to get your email from point A, which is basically your sender, to point B, which is the recipient's inbox. Everything that comes in between is your infrastructure. Okay, it's not just your email accounts, it's not just your domains. Okay, it's wrong and it's incomplete to think that it's just your inboxes, because then it means that you're not going to be monitoring the right things. Okay, so your technical infrastructure is basically your domains, it's your email accounts and your DNS records that you need to basically configure when it comes to your domains. You have your warm up, you have your sequencer that is also part of your infrastructure. So whether you're using Smart Lead, Instantly, Email Bison, these are all parts of your infrastructure as well. And then we also have your lead lists and your scripts that are also part of the infrastructure. Now, these are not parts of your technical infrastructure. However, they do affect the same outcome, which is landing in the recipient's inbox, which means that they are part of your infrastructure. Okay, so when it comes to your lead list, we're talking about lead list quality. So if your list is full of unverified emails because you're not using some kind of a third-party verification tool to verify them, your emails are going to be bouncing and they're not going to be landing in the recipient's inbox at all. And then when it comes to your copy, if it's full of spam words, if it's full of links and there's no spin tags, then once again, you do increase the chances of not landing in the primary inbox. And then another part of copywriting that most people overlook is that if your copy is just not good and if your copy is not relevant, then people are going to manually report you as spam. And if people manually report you as spam, it's still going to affect the chances of you landing in the primary inbox over a long period of time. So if you want to know how to write good scripts, then once again, you can go and watch my other full course on copywriting and offer creation, because everything I mentioned in that video is also going to affect your deliverability, because writing better scripts and having a relevant offer is also going to reduce the chances of people manually reporting your emails as spam. Okay, so basically the test that you should be running just to sort of ensure whether something is part of infrastructure or it's not part of infrastructure is that if something in your setup affects whether the email is going to land in the primary inbox, it means that it's part of your infrastructure. Okay, so when you think about infrastructure, don't just think about the technical components, because it's going to lead to you overlooking other components that also affect the same outcome. Now, next we have cold email deliverability. So what is deliverability? Deliverability is all about landing in the primary inbox. Okay, so whether your email is actually landing in the primary inbox, it's nothing more, it's nothing less, and it's not the same thing as infrastructure. A couple of common terms that you might have come across in the space, obviously the spam folder. If your emails are landing in the spam folder, it means that you managed to get into the recipient's mail server, but then you just got classified as spam. Okay, so if, for example, you're not cleaning your lead lists, okay, and you're reaching out to unverified contacts and the email addresses don't exist, then it means that your emails are going to bounce. And if your emails bounce, it means that your emails didn't even make it to the recipient's mail server, okay, because it doesn't exist and the server basically rejected it. So there's a difference between landing in the spam folder or your emails bouncing, which means they're not even reaching the inbox at all. Okay, so Then we also have the promotions tab. So in Gmail or other similar systems, the email made it to the inbox. It just got categorized away from the primary tab. Okay, so whether you're landing in the spam folder or the promotions tab, the result is pretty much the same because people don't check the spam folder and they don't check their promotions tab. Okay, so what we're trying to achieve here is to land in the primary inbox. Okay, so the key thing you need to distinguish at this point is just the difference between landing in the spam folder or your emails bouncing, which means that they're not even landing in the inbox at all. Deliverability is not your reply rate, it's not your open rate, not your meeting booked rate. These are all downstream metrics. Deliverability just refers to landing in the primary inbox. Okay, now we've talked about infrastructure and deliverability. What is the relationship between the two? So this is basically your cold email process when it comes to the technical part of the infrastructure. You're going to buy your domains, you're going to configure your DNS settings, you're going to set up your inboxes, you're going to warm up your inboxes, you're going to basically connect them to your sequencer. Okay, so that's what most people refer to as your infrastructure. Okay, what I want you to understand is that infrastructure is the cause and deliverability is the result. Okay, so good infrastructure produces good deliverability and bad infrastructure produces bad deliverability. So if we go up to all of these things above, if you don't do the following process properly, if you don't buy the right domains, if you don't set up the right inboxes, if you don't set up your DNS settings, if you don't warm up your email accounts and connect them to your sequencer, then that's bad infrastructure and it's going to lead to bad deliverability. Now, a trap that most people fall into is that bad deliverability does not always mean bad infrastructure. Sometimes your infrastructure could be fine, then everything else is wrong. And when I'm talking about infrastructure in this case, I mean the technical part of the infrastructure. So you can have bad deliverability, but you can have good technical infrastructure. So all the above could actually be configured properly, and you might just have a problem with your offer, with your lead list, with your copy. Okay. And we're going to get into basically how to tell the difference between whether something is a technical problem or something that is not technical, and it has to do with your list or your offer. So when you're investing in your infrastructure, the goal is good deliverability. The only reason I'm saying why you should invest in good infrastructure is so you can achieve good deliverability. All right, so why do most people fail when it comes to cold email deliverability? Why do people struggle so much with cold email deliverability and setting up a good infrastructure as opposed to building a good offer, writing good scripts, and building targeted lead lists? And the reason is that they don't understand it. Okay, so I hop on so many consulting calls with people who are running cold email campaigns, and the single biggest mistake that people make with infrastructure and deliverability is that they don't understand what they're doing. Now, I don't think everyone who sends cold emails needs to understand this in the detail that I understand it, for example. But if you're running a cold email agency or if you're the one who's running the campaigns, then you do need to understand it. Now, if you're just running a business and you're outsourcing it to someone else, or you have a marketing team and a sales team that's doing this for you and you're just overseeing the system, then you don't need to understand it. But if you're the one who's doing all this, then you do need to understand it. Even if you have an inbox reseller who's setting up your inboxes, even if you have an inbox manager who's managing your replies, if you're involved in the cold email process directly, then you need to understand what you're doing. Most people just buy domains because someone told them to. They use Microsoft or Google because they read it on a thread on X. They warm up for 14 days because that's what the sequencer, university, and tutorial said. They send 40 emails per day because more emails per inbox is always better. When it doesn't work, they have no framework for figuring out what went wrong because they don't know why they did all of these things in the first place. So the problem here is that the space is very technical and the information is contradictory. Okay, so why is everything contradictory? The reason why it's contradictory is because people are going to sell you Google accounts and they're going to tell you that Outlook isn't working. And then people who are basically setting up their own infrastructure with some kind of an SMTP are going to tell you that Google isn't working and Outlook isn't working. So then you're here and you just don't know what to do because everyone is telling you different things. And then you have people who are going to tell you to buy domains from GoDaddy because GoDaddy is a better integration with their inboxes. Other people are going to tell you to use Porkbun as a domain registrar because that's a better integration for their inboxes. People are going to tell you to use Smart Lead because they get affiliate commissions if you sign up using their link. Other people are going to tell you to use Instantly. So the problem is that the space has extremely contradictory information and that almost all of the advice online is being pushed by businesses that have a product to sell. So what they do is they actively manufacture panic so you can buy the alternative solution. Okay. Another good example of this is people, for example, selling warm up now. Okay, they're telling you that, for example, warming up your inboxes in your sequencer, in Smart Lead, in Instantly, in Email Bison is now no longer good enough. So what you need to do now is you need to use a separate tool to warm up your inboxes. So now not only do you need an inbox reseller for the inboxes, and not only do you need to buy domains, not only do you need to connect them to your sequencer, but you need to disable your warm up in the sequencer, and you need to use a separate tool to warm up your email accounts. Okay, so people are just breaking down the entire process into more layers and more components so they can fit in their solutions, basically. So what happens is that you end up panicking, you feel overwhelmed because you don't actually understand what's going on, and you just end up, first of all, paying more for things that you don't need, and second, you just keep switching and panicking, and you always feel like you're not doing anything right because people are just pushing their own products online. Okay, so the solution here is that if you understand the fundamentals, then you're the one who's making decisions instead of just being sold to, and instead of just basically falling for all this panic and all this crisis that is being pushed online. Okay, so that's why what I'm going to explain to you in this course is we want to explain why each component exists in the process, what it actually does, how you need to think about it. Okay, and if you understand that, and this is the way by which you approach your cold email campaigns, then you're far less likely to feel panic, or you're far less likely to basically get affected by all the noise that is being pushed online. Why is it so important that you understand deliverability right now? So cold email deliverability, if you haven't understood up to this point in the video, has become the single most talked about topic in the cold email industry over the past year. So just a bit of a rundown as to what actually happened. Okay, so first of all, we had the Google and Microsoft crackdown. Okay, so education panels, nonprofit panels, legacy admin panels, Azure-based SMTP setups, all the gray market workarounds got destroyed. Inboxes that used to cost a few dollars suddenly didn't work anymore. AI filtering got more aggressive. So Google and Microsoft deployed machine learning to detect cold email patterns faster than ever. So what worked one quarter, what worked last week, a month ago, did not work the next. The deliverability crisis narrative basically came out. So every vendor came out with an alternative product and started running campaigns telling you that cold email is dying. You need to fix it using their product. Okay, some of this was real, but most of it was just them marketing their own products. And then finally, you have other businesses that are just in the cold email space. And I would say probably most people watching this video, where you basically just panic switch. Okay, so you go from Google to Microsoft, from Microsoft to an SMTP, from one provider to the next provider, and you basically find the exact same problems with your infrastructure, regardless of what inbox provider you're using, because changing your inbox provider was never the solution to the problem. Okay, so the real cost of getting this wrong is that if your emails don't land in the primary inbox, everything else in your cold email process is pointless. Okay, it doesn't matter how good the offer is, how good the subject line is, how targeted your lead lists are. If you don't have a good infrastructure when it comes to the technical side of things, then your emails are not going to be able to go from A to B. Okay, and we're basically going to go into everything that you need to do to make sure that you maximize the chances of going from A to B. You just need to understand that it's super important that you get your cold email deliverability right by setting up a good infrastructure, both from a technical point of view, but also when it comes to building your lists and your offers. And it's also super important that you understand this purely so that you can filter out all the noise that is being pushed online. Okay, as I said, the biggest mistake that I see from people that are in the space, and they're either just getting started out or they're not sending 10 million cold emails like we do at the agency, and they don't have all that experience on them, and they haven't ran all these different experiments, then what happens is you just get overwhelmed by everything that you're seeing online, and you end up doing things that are just not the solutions to the problems that you're having. So if your emails are not landing in the primary inbox, then probably switching your inbox provider is not going to solve the problem. If all the other stuff that you're doing wrong, if you're still doing those wrong, then changing your inbox provider is not going to make a difference. The next chapter is basically the components that we're going to cover. Okay, so before we start going into every single piece of the puzzle, we're basically going to go over the domains. Okay, these are the domains that your emails are going to come from. We're going to go into your email accounts, your DNS records, your warm-up, your sequencer. And then we're going to go into these adjacent components that also affect deliverability, which are your lead lists and your scripts. Okay, so the lead list refers to the contacts that you're emailing, and the quality of those contacts is going to directly impact your deliverability. Then when it comes to your scripts, the content of the scripts is also going to affect your deliverability. Now, each chapter is a prerequisite for the next. So if you want to skip ahead and just go to the part where you're struggling with, then you can go and do that. But just bear in mind that if you go through everything step by step, it's all going to make more sense. So the first thing that you need to do before you start buying domains, before you start even thinking about your sequencer and your email accounts, is that you need to know how much volume you want to be sending. Okay, so how many emails do you want to be sending on a monthly basis? If you're just starting your cold email process, if you haven't set up anything yet, I'm going right to the beginning. The first thing you need to know is how many emails do you want to be sending? And obviously that is dependent on your budget. Okay, and we're going to go through everything. Every domain is going to cost you $10 to $12. Every inbox is going to cost you $2.5 to $3 a month. So depending on that, you need to figure out your volume. But the volume is going to dictate how many domains you need and how many email accounts you need to set up. Okay. Every email account can send a maximum of 15 emails a day. Okay. This is the safe sending limit at full ramp up. Okay. So when you start sending cold emails, you can start sending 7 emails a day, then 10 emails a day, then 12 emails a day, and then you can fully ramp up to 15 emails per email account per day. And typically speaking, we have around 22 sending days per month. Okay. We don't send emails on weekends, and that comes out to around 22 sending days per month. And typically speaking, you can set up around 3 accounts per domain. Okay, so 3 inboxes per domain. Now, this is just a bit of an example as to how all of the math works together if you want to send 30,000 cold emails per month. Okay, I'm going to show you why you need to be working backwards. Okay, so if you want to be sending 30,000 emails a month, it means that you need to be sending 1,364 emails a day. And in order to send 1,364 emails a day, it means you need 91 email accounts and 31 domains. Okay, so what you need to do is figure out your monthly volume goal. So if that's 20,000, if that's 10,000, if that's 100,000, you want to divide that goal by 22, which is 22 sending days per month. You then want to divide that by 15, which is how many emails every email account can be sending per day. Then you want to divide that by 3, because that's how many email accounts you can set up per domain. Okay, if I want to send 50,000 emails a month, this is how many email accounts I need. This is how many domains I need. And then once we go over the cost later on in the video of the domains and the email accounts, and you'll know how many emails you can be sending. You can just run this calculation basically until the cost aligns with your budget for your cold email campaigns. Okay. So this is the most important thing that you need to do before you buy any domains. If you just decide for no reason to just go buy 8 domains and then you set up 16 inboxes because you only did 2 inboxes per domain, you're not, first of all, making use of your budget properly, because you can set up 3 inboxes per domain. And then second, if your budget is $500, setting up an infrastructure that costs $300, or you end up setting up an infrastructure that costs $700, then first of all, you're either not using your entire budget, or you're just going beyond your budget because you didn't calculate this properly. All right, so once you calculate how many emails you want to be sending per month, the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out how many domains you want to buy. Then you need to figure out what are going to be the names of those domains. So what domains you're going to buy. Then you need to actually go and buy the domains. Okay. If you're just starting out with cold email, this is just a quick non-negotiable rule. If you're already sending cold emails, then this is something you probably should have known already, and you probably do know, but you never want to send cold emails from your primary business domain. Okay. So if your business is called mainly.com, you never send cold emails from alex@mainly.com. Okay, what you want to do is you want to buy lookalike domains, and then you want to basically send cold emails from those domains. So you want to buy domains that are specifically used for cold email purposes. So then if those domains get blacklisted, if they burn out after 10 months or 12 months, you want to replace them. Okay, this is just a normal part of the process. Don't expect that your domains are never going to burn. You're never going to encounter any issues, especially if you're just getting started. Then you're just more likely to encounter certain issues if you make any mistakes in the process. And obviously that's what we're trying to minimize, but mistakes do happen. So in that case, you don't want to have any issues with your primary business domain, because you don't want emails that you're sending to colleagues, to your employees, then like to your accountant, to your lawyer. You don't want those emails landing in the spam folder because you're sending cold emails from that domain. So where do you actually buy your cold email domains from? You need to use a reliable registrar. You could use Spaceship, you could use Porkbun, you could use GoDaddy, you could use Namecheap. We typically use GoDaddy at the agency. No particular reason why. You could always use Porkbun or any of the other options, and they're probably just going to be the same thing. The domain registrar doesn't really make that big of a difference. Now, what does make a bit of a difference is what domains you're actually purchasing. Most people say that you need to use .com domains. We haven't actually seen a difference between sending from a .com domain or sending from a .info domain or .co.uk, or even .net. Okay, obviously you need to stay away from domains like .biz, .xyz, or any other domain that looks a bit sketchy, because what we're trying to achieve through the domain is not only signal to Microsoft and to Google that this is a reliable sender, but also to the recipient of the email. You know, if someone receives an email from someone that has a .biz email account or a .biz domain, then they're far more likely to perceive that as a cold email or something that is related to spam, as opposed to a .com domain or a .co or .info that most businesses and most real businesses actually have and actually send emails from. Okay, so choose one of these registrars to go and buy your domains from. It doesn't really make a difference where you buy the domains from. And typically speaking, if you want to stay on the safe side of things, just buy .com domains. But if you also want to buy .info, or if you want to buy .co or .net, then those are also acceptable, and they're not going to cause any deliverability issues. We always prefer to just use .com domains because we always like to stay on the safe side. But if for whatever reason you don't want to use .com, or if you want to use .com and you've exhausted all your options and now you want to set up more domains and email accounts, then you can move into .info, .co, and .net. But just stay away from .biz, .xyz, or anything else along these lines that basically just looks a bit sketchy. The next step is that you need to configure your DNS records. Okay, now obviously if you're using an inbox reseller, and they're setting up your email accounts for you, then you don't actually need to understand DNS records. You don't actually need to understand how to set these up. If you were running cold email campaigns 3 years ago, 4 years ago, then maybe before all these inbox resellers came to the market, then you needed to know what each of these were and also how to set each of these up. But now that we have inbox resellers, they basically set up everything for you. Okay, but this is where basically 90% of businesses just get lost and they just trust their inbox reseller. Okay, so first we have MX, which is mail exchange. Okay, this basically tells the world where to deliver emails sent to your domain. Okay, so if someone replies to your cold email, the MX record is going to route that reply to your inbox provider. Without that, it's going to bounce. Then we have SPF, which is the sender policy framework. So this is just a text record that says these specific servers are authorized to send email from my domain. So receiving servers are going to check SPF to verify that your email is legitimate. And without SPF, you're going to get marked as spoofed. And then the next one is DKIM. This is basically domain keys identified mail. This is basically a cryptographic signature that is attached to your emails. Receiving servers are going to verify the signature against the public key in your DNS. This is going to prove that the email wasn't tampered with in transit from point A to B. And without DKIM, you basically look unauthenticated. Now, finally, we have DMARC, which is basically message authentication reporting. This is basically a policy that tells receiving servers what to do if SPF or if DKIM fail. For cold email, we typically just set this to none or quarantine. I don't want to spend too much time going over DNS records. All you need to know is that we have 4 DNS records. We have MX, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. If you understand that, then that's good enough. And then if you ever want to actually understand what each of those are, you can always just go online and understand these in more detail. But if you just know that we have this umbrella term, which is DNS, and underneath your DNS, you have MX, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, okay? I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, what should I do about my DNS and DMARC settings? Okay, well, DMARC is a part of your DNS records, okay? So it's DNS records, and then within your DNS records, you have these 4, okay? Now, moving away from DNS records, we also have a domain lifespan, okay? So domains are not gonna last forever in cold email. Okay, the average lifespan for a business sending at scale and actually doing it properly could be around 9 to 10 months of healthy sending, okay, before your performance starts to degrade. So what you want to do is you want to plan a rotation schedule. Just keep in mind that your domains are not going to last forever. Okay, this could happen at 9 months, could happen at 10, could also happen at 12, but it could also happen at 5 or 6, depending on the quality of your cold email campaigns. Okay, so having backup options and always buying new domains and setting up new email accounts is a good precautionary measure so that you avoid all of your domains burning at the same time and then you not being able to send any cold emails. When you reach the 12-month period though, your domains renew every 12 months. So you have 3 options when a domain hits renewal. You can either let it expire. If you're not going to let it expire, then you can renew it at the original registrar. So if you purchase that domain from GoDaddy, if you purchased it from Pork Bun, then you can just renew it. Or you can port it to a cheaper registrar, which is going to save you 30 to 50% per renewal, which this is something that most people don't know. Okay, so if you buy your domains in GoDaddy and you basically are sending cold emails for 12 months and you're not experiencing any issues and you want to continue sending from those domains, you're going to have to renew them at the 12-month mark. And typically to renew them, you're going to have to pay $20, $25 per domain. It's going to be more expensive than when you first buy those domains. So if you want to avoid paying $20, $25, you can just port them onto another registrar. So if you bought them from GoDaddy, you can just port them into Pork Bun or Spaceship at the 12-month mark. And then that's going to allow you to renew them at a 30 to 50% lower cost. Okay. So that's all you need to know when it comes to domains. Okay. Anything else you hear online about domains, what domains you should buy, where you should buy your domains from, is just noise. And it's just people trying to push their own products onto you and make you panic. So when you think about your domains, all you need to know is that first of all, you need to run the calculation of how many emails you want to send. You can set up 3 inboxes per domain. So always bear in mind that every domain can accommodate around 3 inboxes maximum. You can always do 2 if you want to, but we've tested it out and 3 is working just as good as 2. And you're able to just get more emails out there. So why not do it? Then use any of the registrars that I mentioned above. If you want to know what we use GoDaddy. But if you want to use any of the other ones, then they're also reliable. Buy .com domains, buy .info domains, stay away from .biz, .xyz, or anything else that looks sketchy. And then always make sure that your DNS records are configured properly. And within DNS, you just have basically these 4 records right here. And that's all you need to know. If you're using an inbox reseller, which we're going to get into in the next chapter, then they are going to set up everything for you. So you don't actually need to know how to set these up. But if anything is going wrong, and if your inbox reseller tells you that we have a problem with your SPF records, or for example, we have a problem with your DKIM or with your DMARC, at least now you know what they're talking about. Okay, but when it comes to domains, you don't need to know anything else. All right, so next we have your email accounts. Once you buy your domains, you need to set up your inboxes. Okay, so just a bit of context on Google versus Microsoft. These are the most common email accounts that people are setting up for cold email. And at scale in 2026, Google is outperforming Microsoft for cold email, at least through all the conversations that we've had with inbox providers and also through our own campaigns. That's what we're seeing. So what I want to run you through is the insurance policy mindset, okay, which basically goes against what most people say, which is that you need to diversify 50% with Google and 50% with Microsoft. So in my opinion, this is bad advice. Okay, because if Google is performing better than Microsoft, and it's performing better, and it has been performing better over the past 6 months or 12 months, then diversifying your infrastructure 50% with Google and 50% with Microsoft means that 50% of your infrastructure is going to have worse deliverability than the other 50%, which is a large percentage. Okay, so the way that we think about this is that you have your sending budget, and 100% of your sending budget is going to go into the best performing platform, which is currently Google. So that means that you get full performance with the best provider from day one. And then you also have an insurance budget, which is a separate but smaller budget that is basically used for fallback accounts on a different platform. Okay. And these ones are just going to sit there. They're going to be warming up and they're going to be unused. Or if you just want to run them at a smaller scale to compare performance with your primary provider, then you can do that as well. Okay. But with a 50-50 split, it means that you're basically paying a performance tax on the worst performing platform every single day, even when nothing is wrong with the main platform that is working better, which in this case is Google, okay, with the right provider. So with the insurance model, it means that you get the best possible performance, and you're only going to be using your second batch of inboxes with another provider if the main provider stops working as well. Okay, so to give you an example here, if you, let's say you're going to set up 50 email accounts, most people are going to tell you, and what you're probably even doing if you've ever thought about diversifying, is that you're doing a 50-50 split, okay, which means you have 25 with Google and 25 with Microsoft, which means you're paying a performance tax every single day on the Microsoft half, because right now Google is performing better than Microsoft. So with the insurance model, you would have 40 Google accounts, and then you would have 10 Microsoft accounts, which means that the 40 Google accounts are delivering, they're working better, and then you have the 10 Microsoft accounts that are ready to be deployed if something goes wrong. So that's the way that we set up inboxes at the agency. We don't do a 50-50 split. We look at the provider that has been performing best over, let's just say, a 3-month period or a 6-month period, or even just over the past month. And we set up our inboxes with that provider. And then we also have an insurance budget that we use with a different provider. Your insurance budget doesn't always need to be Google or Microsoft. It could even be SMTP. It could be some kind of another private infrastructure that you want to actually test out and you want to have as your insurance. But we always recommend having this kind of mindset when it comes to setting up your cold email infrastructure, because there's just no reason for you to have 50% of your budget going on to a provider that is just not sending as good as another provider. Now, a couple of details when it comes to setting up your email accounts. Typically speaking, you want to be doing 2 to 3 email accounts per domain. The reason why you don't want to do more than 3 accounts on a single domain is that it just looks a bit unusual to receiving servers. So just stick to 3. Why not fewer than 2? Because it means that you're paying for a whole domain to host one account, which means at scale, you're going to be paying more if you're doing 1 inbox per domain. Okay, so always make sure you do 3. It's going to allow you to scale as cost efficiently as possible. So let's do 3 inboxes per domain. And when it comes to the naming convention of those inboxes, what you want to do is you always want to be using your actual name. You don't want to be using sales@domain.com, info@domain.com, contact@domain.com. Okay, so don't use general prefixes. Always make sure that it's actually a name. So for example, if your name is John Smith, you could do john@trycompany.com, john.smith@trycompany.com, j.smith@trycompany.com. That's all you need to do when it comes to setting up your email accounts. And this is the naming convention that you're going to use. When it comes to your profile setup, you always want to look human, always have a profile picture, always have a display name. So your display name in this case would just be John Smith. And the 3 different types of prefixes that you would have are John, John.Smith, and J.Smith. Never use sales, marketing, or anything like that. And then you also want to have an email signature, which basically needs to be as simple as possible, just your name and your role at the company. But you don't need to put anything else. For example, your phone number, your website link, some kind of a free resource, a calendar link, anything like that shouldn't be in the email signature. Okay, the email signature needs to be as small as possible, and always make sure that you add spin tags to your signature as well. If you don't know what spin tags is, we're going to get into it later on, but just make sure that you add spin tags to the signature as well. One important note to mention here is that receiving servers look at sender consistency, okay? And a real looking profile is going to pass the human test. So always make sure that you just do whatever you can to look human. If you're using a marketing@domain.com, you're just decreasing the chances of looking human. If your display name is not a human name, then again, you're decreasing the chances of being perceived as a human. So just do whatever you can. If you don't have a profile picture that is the face of a human, then again, you're just decreasing the chances of looking like a human. And I don't know, to be honest with you, to what extent each of these things is going to lead to you having a problem with deliverability. But if the primary aim here is to show that we are actually human, that you're not some kind of a robot or an AI that is just sending emails, then what you need to do is you need to just think about, what does a normal human's email account look like? And that's what you want to be doing at scale. So that's all you need to know when it comes to setting up your inboxes. Okay, so on every domain that you purchase, all you need to do is just set up 3 inboxes exactly the way that I've explained it here. And if you want to know what inbox provider we're using at my agency, right now we're using premiuminboxes.com. They offer both Google accounts and Outlook accounts. So that's what I recommend you do. But if you want for your insurance budget as an insurance policy to use a different provider, then you can do that. So you just need to decide what makes most sense for your insurance policy. You could either put 80% of your budget to get Google accounts with premium inboxes and the other 20% to get Outlook accounts with premium inboxes, or you could just go 80% with one provider that you know is reliable, and you could put 20% in a completely different provider. So you just need to decide what to do. But if you want to know what we're doing right now, our main inbox provider is premiuminboxes.com. And if you use the discount code Zartarian20, you'll also get 20% off your order. And the discount code is down in the description. So if you just want to set up your inboxes with premium inboxes, I think with the 20% discount code, you can get your inboxes for around $2.50 or $2.80 per inbox, which is very competitive. And you also get the email account set up within around 6 hours compared to other inbox providers that take 24 hours or 48 hours or even 72 sometimes. So if you just want a quick setup, good deliverability, a good support team with a Slack channel, or you can just contact them via email, depends on what you prefer, then I just recommend going with premium inboxes. We've had the best customer experience with them. And typically speaking, for something like deliverability that is extremely technical, most people don't understand it. Most people don't want to understand it. I would say that one of the most valuable things is having a team that actually handles everything for you, and that you can actually ask questions. You could ask them, what is working now? If they recommend that you do anything else, you can tell them to check all your accounts at any given point in time, and they're going to do it immediately. So we've just had the best experience with premium inboxes. And it just so happens that they also have extremely cheap inboxes that we can actually use to scale our infrastructure as much as possible. So the next chapter is warm up. If you're sending cold emails, you're probably warming up your inboxes. If you're just getting started, then you're probably hearing the word warm up being thrown around on social media, and you know that you need to warm up your email accounts for around 14 days. But do you actually understand what warm up is, why we do it, and what is the purpose of running a warm up process? So that's what we're going to clarify. And then I'm going to tell you how to actually warm up your email accounts as well. So warm up tools are basically going to have your new account send small numbers of emails to other warmed up accounts in a network. Those accounts are going to reply, your account replies back, and they basically generate a track record of conversations that looks like normal human email activity. Okay, so typically speaking, if you're using Email Bison, if you're using SmartLead or Instantly, all of these sequencers have the warm-up process integrated into the platform. So you don't actually need to use a separate warm-up tool. If you want to use a separate warm-up tool for whatever reason, then you can always do that. There's always people saying that the warm-up process within these sending tools is not that good. But typically speaking, that's what we're doing right now, and it seems to be working just fine. So that's basically what the warm-up process is. You're basically just generating a track record of conversations. Just think about it as building a credit score before you ask for a loan. If you have a good credit score, you're just more likely to actually get the loan. And the same goes here. If you have a better track record of conversations, you're more likely to land in the primary inbox. What you need to do is you need to warm up your email accounts for 14 days minimum. Less than 14 days and you're basically not warming them up enough. More than 14 days, you can always do it. You can always try 21 days, but we haven't seen a significant difference between warming up your email accounts for 21 days as opposed to 14 days. And you want to be sending 15 warm-up emails per day. This kind of depends on the provider. If you're using premium inboxes, I think the standard number of warm-up emails that they send is around 12, but you don't actually need to get into all the settings if you're using an inbox reseller, because they have their own warm-up warm-up settings that they're going to configure for you in SmartLead. Okay, so if you're using an inbox reseller like Premium Inboxes, all you need to do is you need to buy the domains, and then you just need to submit the onboarding form that they have on their website, and then they are going to set up the email accounts for you. They're going to set up the DNS settings for you. They're going to connect them to your sequencer. Whatever sequencer you're using, they're going to connect it, and they're also going to start the warm-up process. Okay, so the best way to ensure good deliverability, in my opinion at least, is just to put it into the hands of someone who does this for a living and someone who actually does this as a service. So we run a cold email agency. We're not deliverability experts. Most people who are sending cold emails and who are running campaigns are not deliverability experts. Setting up your email accounts yourself and your DNS settings, as opposed to just having an inbox reseller do it for you, is just asking for deliverability problems, because you're more likely to make a mistake if you do it yourself, as opposed to just giving it to someone else to do for you who actually knows what they're doing. So I would just recommend doing it with an inbox reseller regardless of the provider that you're going to use. And you're also going to get the inboxes for cheaper than going direct to Google or Microsoft. Okay. So when it comes to the volume ramp up now, what you want to do is in the first 1 to 5 days, we usually do 7 emails per day. In the next 5 days, we do 10 emails a day, then we increase to 12, and then we increase to 15. Okay. And we don't actually change the warm-up ratio either. What a lot of people like to do is basically just send 1.1 to 1.3x the number of warm-up emails compared to the number of outbound emails they're actually sending. We just usually leave the warm-up settings exactly the same, the way that the inbox provider has them, and we just ramp up the cold outbound volume exactly like this. So we just start off with 7, and then we end up with 15 after 14 days. One important note here is that you want to keep warming up your inboxes after you go live. The reason why you want to do that is because if you are not getting a lot of engagement in your cold email campaigns, at least you have your warm-up emails that are running and they're keeping your reputation score as high as possible, because essentially you have people who are replying to your warm-up emails through the sequencer that you're using. Okay, so even if you're not getting a good reply rate in your outbound emails, you have the warm-up emails that keep the reputation score as high as possible. If you don't warm up your emails and you disable the warm-up when you're sending cold campaigns, it means that the reputation of the email account at that point in time is just based on the engagement that you're getting with your cold email campaigns. Okay, and typically speaking, when you're running cold email campaigns, you're only going to get 3 to 5% of people replying in a good campaign. So if you're getting 95% of people who are not replying, then that's going to significantly damage the reputation of the email account, as opposed to having a warm-up being enabled that typically has 40 to 60% engagement rates. Okay, so always remember to keep the warm-up enabled when you're actually running campaigns. So the next chapter is the sequencer. Okay, so the sequencer is just the platform that is actually pushing out your emails to recipients on a schedule. Okay, so without a sequencer, basically you can't send cold emails. You're going to be manually copying and pasting emails in your Google account. And with a sequencer, you can basically set up a campaign that runs in the background. So once again, common sequencers are SmartLead, Instantly, and Email Bison. We use SmartLead. No particular reason why. That's just the platform that I prefer the most in terms of the dashboard, in terms of basically all the features that it offers. We just like going with SmartLead. So if you just want to do what I'm doing, then just go with SmartLead. But if you're happy with another sequencer, then you can just continue with that. So if you're using an inbox reseller, once again, I'm just going to refer to Premium Inboxes because that's the provider that we use. Then they are going to connect your email accounts to the sequencer, so you don't need to do anything there. So then all you need to do is set the total number of cold emails that you want to be sending per email account. And typically speaking, you want to be sending 15 after the 14-day ramp-up period, and you want to space out your emails around 20 minutes apart. So this is one of the features that most sequencers offer. I would assume that all of them offer this, but at least in SmartLead, this is what they offer, where you can basically space out your emails, and you can choose that you're going to be sending one email every 20 minutes, one email every 25 minutes. So what you want to do is you want to space out those 15 daily emails with at least a 20-minute time gap, because you don't want to send those 15 emails within 60 seconds. That's also going to trigger suspicious behavior. So always make sure that you space out your emails. Then in the sequencer, you can also manage your follow-up sequences. You can set up a 3-step sequence, a 4-step sequence, 5-step sequence. You can do all that in your sequencer. And then finally, you can also track all of your metrics. Okay, so you can see your reply rates, your bounce rates, positive reply rates, all of that you can see within your sequencer. So a sequencer is a super important part of your cold email process and a super important component of your technical infrastructure, because it's where all of your domains and all of your inboxes and your copy and your lead list all sort of come under one roof, which is where you're going to be launching your campaigns. So it's super important that you're happy with your sequencer and that you choose a good sequencer that allows you to monitor all of your metrics, track all of your data, because that's basically where everything is going to be happening. And once again, we use SmartLead. Okay, it's reliable, has good support. Instantly is a good alternative. Email Bison is a good alternative. But what I would say is, like, don't over obsess about what sequencer you're going to use, because they all pretty much do the same thing. And it matters far less than what domains you're going to buy, what inbox provider you're going to use, whether you're going to warm up your email accounts, how you're going to build your lead list. All of those are far more important for deliverability. All right, so that's all you need to know when it comes to the technical part of your cold email infrastructure. I hope everything makes sense. You should have a good understanding now of what you need to do all the way from the beginning of the process to basically connecting your email accounts to your sequencer. That's all you need to do when it comes to the technical part of your infrastructure. So I hope it all makes sense. If you're still confused because there was a bunch of technical terms, go and watch the video again. But just like a bit of a recap, the technical part of your infrastructure is just made up of your domains, of your email accounts, and your sequencer. When it comes to your domains, you know exactly where to buy your domains from and also what domains to buy. And you also know how many domains you need to buy depending on how many emails you want to be sending out. When it comes to your inboxes, okay, always use an inbox reseller. If you want my opinion, go with premiuminboxes.com. And you can also get 20% using the discount code in the description. And I recommend going with an inbox reseller regardless of the provider, because then you don't need to set up all of your DNS records. They're going to do everything for you. All you need to do is submit a form, an onboarding form, regardless of the provider once again. And they are going to connect your inboxes to the sequencer. So you're basically skipping that entire process. And if you've been sending cold emails for many years now, just like I have, then you know how tedious it is and how tedious of a process it is to set up these email accounts yourself and configure all the DNS settings yourself and always make sure that there's no problems and then manually connect all of them to the sequencer. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be using an inbox reseller. Okay. And if there's anything that you don't understand, the best thing you can do is just ask your reseller questions. If you trust a certain reseller, a certain provider for your inboxes, then make that your primary source of, basically what's going on right now with deliverability. At least that's what we do. That's all you need to do. If you have any questions regarding the technical part, then just leave a comment below. And now we're going to move on to the non-technical part of infrastructure that also impacts your deliverability. Okay, starting off with your lead lists and your targeting. So list quality has a direct impact on deliverability. The reason is because when you send an email to a list of people, three things can happen. The email is going to land in the primary inbox, the email is going to land in the spam folder or the promotions tab, or the email is going to bounce, which means that the address does not exist. Okay. So the bounce is obviously the worst because it means that you haven't verified your email list and it means that your emails are not even reaching the person's inbox. And basically what this indicates is that you're just mass emailing people. You don't know who you're emailing, because if you know who you're emailing, it means that you know them, you know their email address. So there's no reason why you should be sending emails that are bouncing. And this is the whole reason why you need to be careful when you're building your lead list and why you need to verify your lead lists. Okay. Because if your emails are bouncing and a high percentage of them are bouncing, it means that the servers are going to conclude that you're sending to old or fake lists, okay, which is a strong spam signal. Now, a key metric here is just your bounce rates. You want to track them. And they should be under 4%. Okay. If it's above 4%, when you pause the campaign, take the lead list, import it into a verification tool, and then just basically only send emails to the good emails. If you want to send emails to the catch-alls as well, always make sure that you validate the catch-alls and then basically send to them as well. One thing that we like to do is we build our lead list, we verify it with a verification tool, and you can use any of these verification tools right here: Million Verifier, Never Bounce, Zero Bounce. You can also use Bounce Ban. So there's a bunch of verification tools out there that you can use. And this is a crucial part of the process that comes after you actually build your lead list in a tool like Apollo, ListKit, or AIArc, or any other database that you're using. And once again, you send emails to the good emails. And then if you want to send to the catch-alls, always validate the catch-alls before you actually send them. And then segment the campaigns in your sequencer. So launch one campaign to the good emails and another campaign to the validated catch-alls. So that way you can actually see if there's a difference in your deliverability depending on whether it's a good email or a validated catch-all. And if you see a common trend when you're reaching out to validated catch-all emails that deliverability is worse, damaging your reputation, then stop doing that and then just continue reaching out to the good emails. But if you want to stay on the safe side, then I would just recommend reaching out to good emails only. A recommendation here, just use two verification tools, because sometimes one verification tool is not going to pick up on everything because different verifiers are going to catch different things. So running them through two verification tools might just catch another 5 to 10% of bad emails that the first verifier missed. One important note here is that infrastructure problems are not always technical problems. Okay, so many times infrastructure problems could be a lead list problem that is in disguise. So the best way to do that is that you need to get obsessive over your data. You need to track all your data, track your bounce rates. If you have a bounce rate that is over 4%, and you actually look into those bounce rates and the bounce is that the email doesn't exist and the mailbox doesn't exist, then in that case, it's a signal that it has nothing to do with your domains, nothing to do with your emails, nothing to do with your sequencer. It just has to do with the fact that you didn't verify your lead list. Okay, so in that case, what you need to do is you need to take out your lead list, pause the campaign, verify it, and then launch the campaign again. Okay, so don't stress over the infrastructure. Don't panic that you need to change the infrastructure if you have a high bounce rate. It just means that you're doing something wrong when it comes to your lead list, okay, if the mailboxes don't exist. Next, we have your scripts, okay? So scripts also affect deliverability, okay? And I'm not talking about how you should be writing your scripts in terms of offers and in terms of personalization and all that stuff. If you want to know how to write good scripts, you can go and watch other videos about that. But I'm talking about scripts in the context of deliverability, okay? Now, first of all, you shouldn't be including any links in your emails, okay? Just remove all of the links. We want no links in your signature. Don't put a meeting link. Don't put a link to your phone number so people can call you. Don't give people a free resource with a link in the initial email. Just remove all of the links. Then you also want to remove spam words, okay? So words like free, guarantee, act now, risk-free, click here, earn money. There's hundreds of spam words that shouldn't be included in your cold email scripts. And if you want to know what all of those spam words look like, then once again, go and watch my full script writing and offer creation course where I go into more detail about how you should be taking out your spam words and what spam words you should be taking out. But obviously, you can just use a spam word checker like Email Guard before you launch a campaign. And then you just plug in your script into Email Guard and it's going to tell you that you have an X amount of spam words that need to be removed. Then we have spin tags. So with spin tags, you basically write multiple variations of the same phrase or word so that your sequencer, for example, Smart Lead, is going to randomly pick one of those variations per send. Okay, so when receiving servers see the exact same email going out hundreds of times, it just signals that it's a mass campaign. So what you want to do is you want to be spinning your words and certain phrases so that not all of the emails that you're sending look identical. And again, there's a lot more detail on this in the other script writing course. So here I'm just letting you know that you need to add spin tags, you need to remove spam words, you need to remove your links. And then also one thing that you need to keep in mind is engagement signals, okay? And engagement signals have to do with your scripts, okay? Replies feedback into your sender reputation. Even a not interested reply is helpful from a deliverability standpoint, okay? So rather than including an unsubscribe link as an opt-out, you're better off including a PS line that says, if this isn't relevant, just reply with no thanks, and I won't send you any more emails, okay? Getting a negative reply is going to lead to better sender reputation than not getting a reply at all. So by having a PS line where you're encouraging people who are not interested to respond to your cold emails is going to be far better than basically having an unsubscribe link where people can opt out without actually responding to your email. Okay, I don't know if Google and Microsoft have reached the point where they can monitor whether engagement is positive or negative. So for example, if someone just says, I'm not interested, or if someone says, I am interested, then once again, I don't know if their AI detection tools have become that sophisticated to the point where they can tell the difference between positive and negative engagement. But just make sure that you are encouraging negative engagement. So that way it's better than nothing. And also another important thing here to mention is that you just need to get better at writing cold email scripts. Because if you're not writing good cold email scripts, Google, for example, makes it extremely easy for people to report an external sender as spam. Okay, once you receive an email, I'm sure all of you have experienced this, when you receive an email from someone you don't know, there's always a big yellow or gray banner at the top of that email that says report as spam when you don't know who the sender is. So if you're not writing good email scripts, then people are just going to manually report you as spam. And then once again, that has nothing to do with your domains, nothing to do with your email accounts, nothing to do with the sequencer. It only has to do with, first of all, your lead list and what you're saying to those people. Because for example, let's say that you want to reach out to marketing agencies and you build a lead list in Apollo, AI Arc, ListKit, any database, and you think you're reaching out to marketing agencies. But because you didn't build that list properly, you didn't use the right filters, in reality, 50% of that list is not actually marketing agencies. It's tech companies, accounting firms, because you didn't use the right keywords. You didn't upload that lead list into Clay so you can actually scrape their websites and qualify them. So you're just reaching out to people who you think are marketing agencies, but they're not actually marketing agencies. So then you actually write a script that says, hey, I noticed that you're a marketing agency, but it's actually an accounting firm. Then once again, you're increasing your chances of just getting reported as spam. So one really, really important thing that leads to bad deliverability is not building accurate lead lists and not saying the right thing to those people. So if you want to improve your deliverability, you also need to get better at building lead lists, and you also need to get better at writing cold email scripts. Next, we have managing your infrastructure long term. Okay, every cold email platform has disconnects. That's normal. It happens to every business and every provider. What's not normal is you losing your mind every time it happens. Okay, if you're using a tool like Smart Lead instantly, then you probably know that your inboxes get disconnected from time to time, and you need to talk to your inbox reseller. You need to let them know that, disconnected, can you reconnect it for me? So Google and Microsoft enforce token rotation policies that require periodic reauthentication. Okay, so sometimes sequencers, they lose connection due to API changes. Sometimes there's network glitches. Sometimes things happen and your inboxes are going to disconnect from your sequencer. So what you need to do is just expect this and just have a process for handling it, as opposed to panicking every time this happens or getting frustrated. Just reconnect the inbox, move on, and send the emails. Okay, so switching your providers and coming up with different solutions that are not going to solve the fact that your inbox are just going to be getting disconnected from time to time, it's just not going to solve the problem. Okay, so if you're switching your provider, your inbox provider, every time your inboxes are getting disconnected because you're getting frustrated and you think that it's because of the provider, what's going to happen is that you're going to burn your existing warm up. You're going to need to set up new accounts. You're going to have to warm them up for 14 days. It's going to disrupt your campaigns. You're not going to be able to send during the transition from one provider to the next. And then you're going to understand that you're getting the same disconnects with the other provider. So now what you did is that you traded a known minor issue, which is disconnects, with a new set of unknown issues that comes with a new provider that you just changed to because you were frustrated about something. So as I mentioned previously, build the relationship with your inbox provider, have a direct communication channel, have visibility into what you're using, give them visibility into what you're using, and just basically ask them questions, and you'll get quick responses when something breaks. And I would just say that your relationship with your inbox provider matters more than the provider itself. So two things here. First of all, that's why you need to choose the right inbox provider, and you need to make sure that they are proactive and they're also just active on their end. So when you're reaching out to them, you're getting good responses and you're basically having them check your infrastructure as frequently as needed. And then second, you need to make sure that on your end of the relationship, like, you're doing what you need to do, which means that you're asking them questions, you're actively checking your infrastructure. If the reputation is going down, you're sending them screenshots, you're asking them questions, and you're just basically keeping them in the loop. Because if you just set up a cold email infrastructure with a certain provider, regardless of the provider, and then things are not going well, your email reputation is basically going down the drain, your emails are landing in spam, your reply rate is extremely low, and if you don't tell them that you're experiencing problems and you're not basically giving them visibility and you're not explaining to them what's happening, then how do you expect them to fix that for you? So just make sure that you're being proactive on your end to get the best out of that relationship. Now, next we have monitoring your campaigns and metrics that you should be tracking. Okay, you can't manage what you don't measure. So this is what you need to be tracking and what you should ignore. Okay, so from a deliverability point of view, you just want to be tracking your reply rate. So the percentage of recipients who reply. A good range here is around 2 to 5% for cold email. 5% is on the higher end. At least 1.5 to 2% is usually good. Low reply rates usually indicate deliverability issues. So if you're reaching out to enterprise, sometimes you can expect lower reply rates than when you're reaching out to enterprise or small to medium-sized businesses. So it always depends on your market as well. But typically speaking, we're looking for at least 1.5 to 2% when it comes to your reply rate. And when it comes to the reply rate, you should be tracking your static reply rate, which is the reply rate that you can see in your sequencer dashboard per campaign, but you also want to be tracking the reply rate per domain. Okay, this is something that is usually a bit more technical and it requires a bit more manual work, because your sequencer, whether it's Smart Lead, Instantly, or Email Bison, they're going to give you the reply rate per campaign. But if you want to know whether a specific domain has deliverability issues, then you need to track the reply rate per domain. So if you have a domain that has 3 inboxes, you need to get the average reply rate of those inboxes, and that is going to be your reply rate per domain. And if the reply rate per domain is less than 2%, then it usually indicates that specific domain might have deliverability issues. Because if you have 150 domains as part of a specific campaign, then you could have 120 of those domains that are performing really well and they're pushing up the reply rate. But in reality, you could have 30 domains that have a really low reply rate, 0.5%, 0.2%. But obviously, if you're just looking at the static reply rate, you're not going to be able to identify that. Then the next metric is the positive reply rate. So this is the percentage of replies that are actually interested. A good range here is 5 to 20% of total replies. Now, this is quite a big range, but once again, it depends on who you're reaching out to and what your offer is. Usually a low positive reply rate means that your offer and your targeting are not good, and there's usually a mismatch. So when you have a low positive reply rate, it has nothing to do with your deliverability. If you want to know how your infrastructure is performing, you look at your reply rate. Okay, so how many people are actually responding? And then if you want to know, out of those people who are responding, how much is my message resonating with those people? That's when you look at your positive reply rate. Then we have the bounce rate. Okay, so the bounce rate just needs to be under 4%. More than 4% means that you're damaging your sender reputation, and you just need to verify your lead list immediately, because it means that your emails are not even landing in the actual inbox. Okay, so for example, if you have a low bounce rate and your bounce rate is, for example, 1%, 0.5%, but your reply rate is also 0.5%, it means that your emails are not bouncing, so they're landing in the prospect's inbox, but they're most likely landing in the promotions tab or the spam folder, which is why you're not getting any replies. And this is why it's so important for you to have a PS line that says, please reply with no thanks if you're not interested, because that way you're encouraging people who are not interested to also respond. Because if you don't include that disclaimer, then you're only going to be getting people who are interested to respond. So you don't actually know if the people who are not interested, are they seeing your emails or are they not seeing your emails? So if people who are not interested are also responding to your emails, it also gives you a good indication as to whether people are seeing your emails in the first place. Okay. And one final thing when it comes to your metrics, don't track open rates and don't track click-through rates. First of all, click-through rates, you only track them if you have links in your emails, and you shouldn't have links in your emails, which means that there's no point to track the click-through rate on a specific link. And then second, you don't track your open rates because for deliverability, we track reply rates. And then also when you track open rates, it inserts a little pixel into your emails, which is going to damage your deliverability because it's perceived as a link. So those are the metrics that you need to track when it comes to your cold email deliverability. I think now you should have a really good understanding of what infrastructure is, what deliverability is, what you need to do for your domains, inboxes, your warm-up period, your lists, and your copy. So now I'm just going to run you through a few examples of what a bad infrastructure looks like compared to a good infrastructure. So the first example is two agencies. Each of those want to send 30,000 emails a month. Agency A buys 5 domains. They set up 6 inboxes per domain, and they're basically sending 30 emails per inbox per day. Okay, so that way they're achieving 30,000 emails a month. And then they're warming up their inboxes for 7 days. They didn't set up their DNS settings. They don't have any insurance accounts. And with their list verification, they just use one tool. And then if we compare this to Agency B, they have 31 domains. They're doing 3 inboxes per domain, 15 emails per day per inbox. They warmed up their inboxes for 14 days. They have full SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and MX records that are verified. They have 10 insurance accounts on a separate platform, and they also verify their lead list 2 times using 2 different tools. So my question is, which of those agencies do you think is going to get, first of all, better deliverability? And which of those agencies do you think is more prepared for some sort of a crisis or some sort of a problem with their primary inbox provider? And obviously the answer is Agency B, okay? Because Agency A, first of all, purchased way too few domains. They set up too many inboxes per domain. They're sending too many emails per inbox per day. They didn't warm up their email accounts for long enough to build that reputation score. They didn't set up their DNS records because maybe they set up the email accounts by themselves. They didn't trust an inbox provider to do it for them. They don't have any insurance accounts. So if all of those inboxes have been set up with Google using a certain provider, then if Google is not performing well, they're not prepared for it. And the list verification once is not the end of the world. But obviously, if we compare it to the Agency B, who use 2 verification tools, they're also in a much better position. Now, the next example is a 50-50 split versus the insurance policy mindset that I mentioned previously. So the first setup is a 50-50 split. So let's say you want to set up 50 inboxes, you do 25 with Google and 25 with Microsoft. You think you're diversified because, 50-50 is the way to go, and that's what everyone is saying online. Microsoft inboxes, in the meantime, are consistently underperforming Google by 30 to 40% in reply rates. So essentially, your effective performance per dollar is roughly 70% of what it could have been if you had the insurance policy mindset. So in this case, the diversification mindset of doing it 50-50 is actually costing you real revenue and real replies every single day for no actual safety benefit, because Google is consistently outperforming Microsoft. And if we compare this to setup B, which is the insurance policy where we have 40 with Google and 10 with Microsoft, we have full performance by the 40 Google accounts that are consistently outperforming Microsoft. The Microsoft accounts are never needed, but even if you want to use them on the side, then you can do that. But let's say, for example, Google is not performing well in month 4, then that means that you can switch up and you can put your Microsoft accounts in. But in the meantime, you got 3 months of better sending with Google. So essentially, setup A had no advantage despite the same total cost, okay? Because at the end of the day, there are going to be times where Microsoft is going to outperform Google. But the point is, if that happens in 6 months' time, do you prefer to get 6 months of really good optimized sending with Google until there's a problem with Google where you have your insurance policy? Or do you just want to have a 50-50 split and get suboptimal performance for the next 6 months just because Microsoft one day might perform better than Google. Okay, so that's why we consistently opt for the insurance policy as opposed to the 50-50 diversification split. Now that we've gone through how to set up your infrastructure and you know how to do everything, and we've also gone through a couple of examples, I also want to run you through a couple of common mistakes, both at the beginner level and the intermediate level, that I see consistently on consulting calls with agencies. So first of all, in the beginner mistakes, sending from your primary business domain, you're just going to burn your real business domain if you do that. So customer support, invoices, and your team emails are just going to land in spam too, and you don't want that to happen. Using cheap workaround inboxes, just make sure you're using good inbox providers. You can use premium inboxes. You can use Inboxlogy. You can use Scaled Mail. There's a bunch of inbox providers out there that are extremely reliable. So if you just want to know what inbox providers to use, and you don't want to use premium inboxes, or you want to use a second provider as your insurance policy, just let me know in the comments and I can give you a list of providers that you can use both for your main sending budget and for your insurance policy. Then not knowing what platform you're on. So for example, saying I run Outlook when you're actually on the Azure SMTP, just always know exactly what you're using and its parameters. Number 4 is skipping or rushing warm up. Okay, so just going straight into sending. Always make sure that you use the 14-day warm up process so you can build your reputation score. And then 5 is including links in your initial cold emails. Okay, so just don't include any links in your emails. So those are the beginner mistakes that I see. A couple of intermediate mistakes that I see from people who have been actually sending cold emails for longer is, first of all, splitting Google 50-50. So the diversification mistake, where you're basically paying a performance tax on the worst performing platform consistently just because you think something might go wrong. Then it's just sending 30 to 50 emails per day per inbox. You're going to burn your accounts in 6 weeks instead of 9 months. So you just need to see like what is more valuable to you. Is it more valuable that you can send as many emails as possible for as cheaply as possible in the next 30 days? Or do you want to make sure that you have a good infrastructure that is robust and is going to last for the next 6 to 12 months? In that case, you should reduce that to a maximum of 15 emails per day. Then the next mistake is blaming your infrastructure when it's actually the offer or the lead list. Okay, this is, I would say, one of the biggest mistakes that I see. You need to diagnose the problem depending on the metric that you're tracking. So if it's your bounce rate, you want to look at your lead list. If you have a problem with your positive reply rate, then you need to look at, once again, your list and your copy and your offer. If you have a problem with your reply rate, then you can look at your technical infrastructure. Now, the next mistake is running the same offer for 6+ months. Okay, there's a thing called offer fatigue that is real. If you're just sending the same script and the same offer for 6+ months and the same inboxes are sending the same script, then once again, over a long period of time, that is also going to lead to your deliverability being damaged. You need to test new offers, put new offers in the market. Don't just send the same offer and the same copy consistently every single day for 6 months, because they are going to pick up on you that you're just basically sending mass emails. Okay. And the final mistake is not running warm up alongside live campaigns. Okay. So warm up is not just for pre-launch. You have to keep it running in parallel with your cold email campaigns. Okay. Because continuous engagement signals, as we mentioned previously, are going to protect your reputation long term. Okay. So these are just a couple of mistakes here. If you want to know more mistakes that people make, then once again, just let me know in the comments. But these are just 10 of the most common that I keep seeing. So finally, now that we've gone through everything, I'm going to give you your final setup checklist. Okay, I want you to use this checklist for every new infrastructure deployment. Every time you're going to set up new infrastructure, don't launch until you check all of these boxes off. Okay, so let's just go through every single one of these sections. First of all, we have pre-launch planning. So the first thing you need to do is you need to calculate how many emails you want to be sending every single month. Okay, once you calculate the total monthly volume, then you want to calculate how many daily emails you need to be sending, okay, in order to hit that monthly goal. Then how many email accounts do you need in order to hit the daily goal? And then how many domains do you need, okay, in order to set up that many email accounts? If you need to set up 30 email accounts, so you need to set up 10 domains, okay, because you can set up 3 email accounts per domain. And then once you calculate how many inboxes you're going to set up, you need to do a total budget split between your active sending infrastructure and your insurance infrastructure. So once you do that, you've done the pre-launch planning. Then when it comes to domain setup, you want to buy them from an approved registrar that we mentioned previously. Then when it comes to your DNS, MX, SPF, DKIM, and your DMARC, and also the forwarding to your website, this is all going to be handled by your inbox provider. So if you're using any kind of inbox provider out there, all of them are basically going to set up your domains for you, and they're going to connect it to the sequencer. So you can just tick all of those off. Then when it comes to your email accounts, you want to do 2 to 3 inboxes per domain. Make sure you set up a profile picture. You have your display name as a first name and last name. Don't just put Alex as the display name. Make sure it's your first name and your last name. Make sure that you have an email signature configured in your sequencer. And then you don't want to use any generic sales or info email addresses for cold email. The next step is your warm-up. So in terms of the warm-up pool that you're going to select, you can just use the warm-up pool in your sequencer. It's perfectly fine. Make sure warm-up is enabled on every single account for minimum 14 days. Make sure that you're ramping up your volume from 7 to 15, and make sure that the warm-up is configured to continue running after the live launch. Okay, so make sure that the warm-up is enabled even when you launch your cold email campaigns. Then when it comes to your sequencer, choose your sequencer. Let's just say Smart Lead in this case. All of the inboxes are going to be connected through your inbox reseller. You want to set these sending limits to 15 per day maximum when it's completely ramped up. You need to set your sending schedule from Monday to Friday, and you want to be sending one email every 20 minutes. Don't send all 15 emails within 60 seconds. The reply detection and bounce handling happens automatically in the sequencer. Then when it comes to your lead list, make sure that your data is fresh. You know, if you built a lead list 6 months ago and you want to reach out to that list of people today, you need to re-verify that lead list to make sure that the data is actually fresh. Verify your lead list with one verification tool like Million Verifier. Verify it again with another one. Segment your catch-alls into a segmented campaign after you validated those catch-alls, and then make sure that you actually have your ICP and that lead list is an accurate representation of your ICP. Then when it comes to your scripts, you want to run them through a spam word checker like EmailGuard, 0 links in your emails. You want to have spin tags applied to your email words and phrases to make sure that your emails don't look identical. And then make sure you also have a follow-up sequence written to make sure that you're actually sending different emails from those email accounts and you're not just sending the same email script 100 times. And finally, we have insurance and maintenance. So make sure you have your insurance accounts purchased. You can either use the same provider, for example, premium inboxes, but you can set them up with Outlook within premium inboxes, or you can go completely to a different inbox reseller, and then you can basically just set up completely different accounts. Either or is fine. Make sure your insurance accounts are warmed up and ready to deploy. Make sure that you add your refresh dates so you know when your domains are going to renew and when your inboxes are renewing every single month. Make sure you have your monitoring dashboard set up, which you can do this through your sequencer, or if you want to do something more custom, then you can do that as well. And then also, once again, make sure you're tracking your domain renewal dates. So when every one of these boxes is checked, you're ready to launch your cold email campaigns. All right, so that's the end of this course. You now know everything that there is to know about infrastructure and deliverability. You know what they are, you know how they differ, you know how they relate. Infrastructure is the cause, deliverability is the result of good or bad infrastructure. You know how to plan your setup based on volume goals, daily volume, how many email accounts you need, and then how many domains you need. And the math is going to drive every purchase decision down the line. You know how to set up each component, your domains, your email accounts, your warm-up, your sequencer, your lead list, and your copy, all with the why behind every choice. So you're not going to be making decisions just because you've been told to, but now you actually understand why you need to make these decisions. You also know how to manage your infrastructure long-term, how to troubleshoot your campaigns, so how to identify which metric is affected, and then based on the metric that is affected, what is the problem? Is it your reply rate, which means it's a deliverability problem? Is it your bounce rate, which means that you're not actually reaching the inbox because the inbox doesn't exist, which means that you need to verify your lead list? Or is it a positive reply rate problem, which means that it's your copy or your offer? And finally, we also have the complete checklist, which is 8 grouped sub-checklists that you can use for every new infrastructure deployment. All right. So one thing I'm going to leave you on is that the cold email industry is going to keep telling you that things are broken, that things don't work, that there's a crisis, that you need a new tool, that the old methodology is dead. Most of that, 90% of that is noise. And it's just people taking advantage of the fact that 90% of people don't understand deliverability and infrastructure. And because most people don't understand deliverability and infrastructure, it's very easy to manufacture panic and make them make certain decisions and buy new tools and new software and introduce new processes and new methodologies in order to solve the problem that actually never existed and was only created in order to actually get them to sell you their product. So some of this is real. Sometimes the information that is being put out there is valid. So all you need to do is you need to decide where you're going to be getting your information from. You have to choose a handful of reliable sources, whether it's someone's YouTube channel, whether it's someone that you follow on LinkedIn, on X, whether you're reading something online that you trust, or whether you have your own community or a certain network that you trust with other people that are in the space. You just need to pick your source, and then you just need to stick to that. Because if you're listening to everyone, you're going to get affected by what everyone is pushing, and you're not going to be able to tell the difference. But hopefully, after watching this video, you can now tell the difference and you actually know what to do. So Don't overthink your infrastructure. Don't get stuck in the planning phase forever because you're overwhelmed by all the information that is being pushed online. The fundamentals work. Just set them up correctly, run them, and your campaigns are going to deliver. And just expect that there will come a point in time where your campaigns are going to stop delivering, whether it's in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or 24 months, and you're just going to have to set up the infrastructure again. But if you do everything that I mentioned in this video, then you are going to be covered from a deliverability perspective, at least in the foreseeable future. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did get some value out of it, just make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And if you have any questions regarding cold email infrastructure and deliverability, just leave them down in the comments. If you run a B2B company and you want to have a full cold email system built out for your business, but you don't want to actually do any of the work and you just want qualified sales meetings delivered to your calendar without any time input from your team, then just click on the first link in the description to book a call with me. And if you run a cold email agency or a B2B company, but you don't want us to actually build the entire system for you, and you're just looking for one-on-one mentorship with myself as to how you can do all this, how you can set it up, then just click on the second link in the description, fill in the application form, and then if we're a good fit to work together, then I'll reach out to you. So once again, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.